So we're going to finish up with our state government information in lessons. So today's lesson is called The Great State. Our learning objectives for today will be to describe the essential characteristics of state government and to describe the role of state governments in providing services and regulating activity. That sounds like it's a lot of work, but I'm sure that as we do our lesson today, that be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So, our first slide is about the state government. This whole lesson is about state government. So, we learned today that state governments work almost exactly like the federal government. Reminder, the federal government is the government that's above all the state governments. It's the central government that unifies all 50 states. So, this is saying that each state's government works almost exactly like the federal government. How does it work like that? Well, we'll read below. There are 3 branches of government: an executive branch, a legislative branch, and a judicial branch. So in the federal government, there are 3 branches of government, and in the state governments, they also have 3 branches of government. A state's 3 branches interact just like the 3 branches at the federal level. The purpose of having 3 branches is to balance power so that no one branch or person becomes too powerful. So it's a lot like how it works in a federal government. We have 3 branches of power as checks and balances, 3 branches of government. So there's checks and balances to make sure that one doesn't have too much power over the other. And so this is saying in the state government, each branch, we have a legislative branch, a judicial branch, and an executive branch. The state's legislature passes laws. That's the legislative branch. A state's government can veto laws. A state's governor, which is the head of the executive branch, can veto laws that are passed, and a state's court has the power to decide whether state laws violate the state's constitution. We'll learn more about how each state has their own constitution, just like the federal government does. All right, so here we learn, this is talking about the state's executive branch. So we know that the executive branch for the federal government, the head of it is our President of the United States. So here it's saying the head of a state's executive branch is our state government. The governor of a state is like the president of the state and has similar powers such as the power to veto bills that are passed by the state's legislative branch. Our state governor for Michigan is Governor Gretchen Whitmer. A state's executive branch also includes many different departments. There's such departments for education, transportation, health, and other services. These departments carry out the laws passed by the state's legislators. So we see here already the executive branch for a state and the legislative branch work hand in hand together to provide someone who runs the branches and for someone who gives all the laws. So just a reminder, the head of the state's executive branch is called a state governor. A state's legislative branch, this is the state's law-making body. So the legislative branch of the federal government and of a state government is a law-making body. So the state's legislators, people who work in the legislative branch, they are our state's lawmakers. Each state is divided into legislative districts so that all have almost roughly the same number, so each district can be represented equally. So citizens in each district elect representatives to serve in the state legislature. That means that state legislators will represent the citizens who live in their district. For example, Michigan is split up into different districts, and then they elect people from each of their districts to help go into our legislative branch to make sure that each place in Michigan, all areas of Michigan are getting equal representation. That way that when laws are created, it's fair for everybody in Michigan and it doesn't just benefit certain areas. This branch is super important and it's really great for everybody to have equal representation. Next, we're going to go over our judicial branch. So at the state level, just like in the federal government level, cases start in a trial court. States also have appeal courts where people can fight a trial court ruling. And every state has their own high court. So there's different levels of courts within the federal government and within the state government. At the state's high court, they review decisions made by lower courts, and they supervise the lower courts. and the high court in each state interprets the state constitution as it applies to the law. So the judicial branch is responsible for holding citizens responsible for following the laws and for making sure that our laws represent our state's constitution. So, now we've learned about our three branches of government: judicial, legislative, and executive. We originally learned about these in regards to our federal government. Now we just learned that each state also has those three branches of government. Now we're going to talk more about states' laws. So just a reminder, the state legislature or the state legislative branch is the state's lawmaking body. They're the people who make all of our laws. So in each state, there is a state constitution. Just like how the United States has a constitution that unites everybody and gives us our laws and appoints power, each state also has their own constitution that describes how the state's government must operate. This it includes laws such as each state has to require free education for all state citizens. So example, you're attending a public school right now. Your parents don't have to pay for you to come to school. There are some schools, like private schools, that require tuition for you to attend. And so in many states, there's this process that allows citizens to draft laws, where, let's say, a group of citizens get together, then they come up with a law they want to put in place. They collect enough signatures. They bring this to the legislative branch, and that once they have enough signatures, that law they want to create is put on the ballot, and we get to vote for it. So that is how a state law is adopted. But let's say we fifth graders, we convince our parents to try and get a law passed that everybody has to eat mac and cheese every day for lunch. Like, no matter what, everybody in the state of Michigan must eat mac and cheese for lunch. We'd have to collect enough signatures from people to bring that to the legislative branch. And once it's to the branch, they'll put it on the ballot for the next election. And then everybody in the state of Michigan gets to vote on it. But that rule that everybody in the state of Michigan has to eat mac and cheese for lunch, that would only apply to Michigan. So even though Ohio was right next to us, they wouldn't have to follow that law because it's a specific law for Michigan. Next, we're going to go over local government. So for here, we're talking about local governments are the governments that are in our cities and counties, and they get their power from the state. So we have the federal government up here, then we have the state government, and then we have local government underneath that. So it's kind of like a tier. At the very top is the federal government, in the middle is the state government, and then at the very bottom is local government. The local gets their power from the state, and the state gets their power from the Constitution or from the federal government. So in the state decides what services cities and counties are responsible for providing and what kinds of laws cities and counties are allowed to make. For example, a local government, so for example, Williamston has their own local government. They provide services such as schools, libraries, police, water, and the trash collection. They're all controlled by our local government. So for example, our local government is in charge of making decisions about our schools, about our local libraries, about local police, about our water systems, and how trash is collected and on what days. All those rules are governed and instituted by our local Williamston government. So, local governments must follow both state and federal laws when they create these services. So, for example, even though Williamston local government is in charge of our schools, they still have to follow all the rules from the state and federal government about what a school must be and all the rules and regulations that come with that. All right, boys and girls, this was our last slide. So just to recap, we talked about our state government, how there are three branches of government: judicial, there's executive, legislative, and judicial. And we talked about states' laws and how they're created, how there's a state constitution just like there's a United States Constitution. And then we talked about local government, about how it goes federal, state, and then local, and how the local government provides services to our community. All right, thank you for watching. Make sure you complete our Google Form worksheet, and you can rewatch this video if you need help answering some of the questions. Thank you, fifth graders. Have a great day.